Hello, Blair Tushaus. How are you doing?
Doing well, Joe. How are you?
Good. Great to see you again.
It's a pleasure as usual.
So today we're going to cover the best place to keep your cash, and it's not CDs. Why don't we jump right in? Maybe give us a quick intro of yourself and the firm, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate this time to talk about this topic. Really excited about. But for those who don't know me, my name is Blair Tushaus. I was born and raised here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Um, Native to the Valley. Love my Phoenix Suns. Love my sports teams. I actually played some college football, as you can see behind me. Played for U of A. Got some family that played for ASU, but I've been across the country. Glad to be back in the Valley servicing people here. Got my older brother, Chase. He is leading our San Diego office, specifically in Point Loma. But a little bit about our firm. We go as far back as the 80s. Originally, ARMA Financial Services, acronym for Arizona Medical Association, primarily dealing with doctors, healthcare professionals. And then over time, we changed it to our name, Tuss House Wealth Management, as we saw that we were servicing more than just healthcare professionals. So at this point, we still have our father, Kirk, in the business, but primarily Chase out in San Diego and myself here in Scottsdale.
So the title of today's episode is Tax Efficiency with Cash Investments. Can you break that down for those who are not familiar with that and kind of give us a quick intro?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we all think about where do we put our safe money, and a lot of people they're going to say their savings account, right? You got to have some type of cash reserve to manage those. Hey, new roof, that's easily 20, 25 grand, at least out here. I can't imagine some other states, but window replacements or those falls. So we need that bucket of cash that's going to be safe in our portfolio, but we also don't want it under our mattress. And that's where people can get tripped up because they think about, well, I'll put it in my savings. Well, I bank at Chase, and for the record, my Chase savings yields me 0.1%. So we got to find some different solutions. Um, so, not just different solutions, but different tax efficient solutions. So, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Solutions that yield us or get us a return that's going to be better than that 0.1% we're getting at our bank. And it's not just Chase Bank. I don't want to throw them under the rug here, but there's a lot of institutions that are happy to take your money, give you 0.1%, loan it out to Mr. and Mrs. Smith and get a 7% mortgage, and they're netting the difference. So, where are the opportunities? Not just the opportunities, but the opportunities that are going to get us a tax efficient return.
And we're going to dive deeper into more of this, but why do you think there are so many people that are just okay with the 0.01%? Is it just the default, or what's the reasoning there?
I think it's a lack of education, hence why we're having the conversation is nobody wants to tell them because the people who know are the banks and are the people who are taking advantage of that gap, that disparity or discrepancy, excuse me. So really it's a lack of education, a lack of financial advice or knowledge, and that's not on you, that's not on anybody's fault, but really once you understand, we see a lot of our clients not even utilizing a savings account. We're utilizing some of these other sources that can, once again, not just give us something in return, but even more tax efficient. And I do want to take a step back, even if that savings account yielded 4%, or some people have a high yield savings and they'll get roughly 3, 4%. There's a couple of things, kind of not going to be so helpful or not as good in those type of accounts. First is the fact that it's yield producing. Things like CDs, high yield savings, bonds, that's all taxable income as ordinary income, and that's where we see most people have their highest tax brackets. So, how do we avoid the ordinary income tax and utilize something that could appreciate or prevent that unnecessary income, but also get us a return. So that's something we'll dive into, and I think is really important to not only increase our return, but also declassify it into something else that isn't classified as ordinary income.
Awesome. Sounds great. So yeah, sounds like we'll touch on the difference between classic savings account, CDs, and then some more advanced strategies that could have tax benefits as well.
Right. And all this goes back to being educated. People aren't realizing when they come to us, oh, I could be utilizing this. And we kind of deem some of these accounts as savings replacers. It's like the aha moment when somebody's like, wait a minute, I've been having my money in point one when I could have been utilizing some of these alternatives.
Yeah. And I guess some quick back of the napkin math, not to put you on the spot, but $1 million in a Chase account, 0.01% gives you peanuts. $1 million in a CD, maybe 40,000 a year, but missing out on a bigger chunk. What kind of give a ballpark on what someone might be able to gain by going beyond the CDs?
Right. So, we look at the 0.1% is going to be nominal. 4%, is going to yield you $40,000 on a million. That sounds pretty good, but it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Hmm.
Um, Being in Arizona and San Diego, um, we have some high tax brackets, and for somebody who has $1 million, let's assume they are in a higher tax bracket. The highest marginal tax bracket is 37%. So if you're a high income earner and then you yield that 40,000 on the million, then you're subjected to your marginal tax bracket on that 40,000. So 37% on the 40,000, just doing some math here, that's $14,800 you're going to have to then give back. So your real return is going to be much less than, the yield you see on a piece of paper. And that's what we're trying to show people is, hey, a yield and these people who rate shop or see a CD, it's not going to be their actual return because they're going to have to pay taxes on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super clear and that helps a lot. I think a lot of people forget about they're thinking, hey, 40,000, but they're not thinking about what they're going to be taxed on and what the real return is.
Yeah, it's and then it's okay, well, Blair, what's the alternatives? And that's something where we need to first think about how can we declassify, invest in something that's not ordinary income. Well, we know that savings, we're going to get a 1099, high yield savings, a CD, all those we're going to get 1099s for. So, what is something we can get out of that 1099 world? Something that we say appreciates, so that 4% comes into something that isn't necessarily income, but value on top of the principal. Okay.
Yeah, that's super useful. And that's very concrete where you're thinking, if I'm getting a 1099 for it, maybe I should look at some alternatives.
Exactly. It's at 1099s, these are good problems. But when we get to that upper echelon of income and asset level, we need to be smarter. And you know, 1099s for a lot of us, or W-2s, got us to where we are at. But how do we sustain and build more efficiently, right? So I don't want to knock on 1099s and W-2s, but it's ordinary income and it's going to be one of the higher tax brackets versus what I'll get into here, which is long-term gains, which is a much smaller tax bracket, totally different tax bracket tier than ordinary income. So, how do we invest into the things that are in the long term gains realm?
Yeah, let's dive right in.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's multiple ways we can splice this up. Investments, when we want to invest in something that's in a long-term gain perspective, typically we do it in the structure of a non-qualified account. For example, a trust account, an individual account. You and your wife or your significant other, I should say, could have a joint or joint with rights of survivorships. There's a lot of account names for non-qualified or taxable accounts. Now, within those accounts, that's just the account type, right? We have our IRAs, we're leaving those to the side. The non-qualified accounts are the accounts that we take our after-tax dollar and invest it. And we talked about the 1099 investments, the high yield savings or savings and the CDs, the bonds that produce a yield. Not to get too off topic here, but it's very important to note that we just had a good family friend of ours who's onboarding as a new client. And as he's moving funds over, he said, by the way, I just bought this bond fund. And he's like totally safe. Principal's protected. And that's where we had to come to the table and he did it with non-qualified dollars, which here we are talking about it, and we're going to have that educational piece with him. But what people don't realize is that bonds have principal risk. Um, and so we'll touch on that another date, but you know, I touch on bonds because bonds produce yields, that is income.
Hmm.
But another, oh, I guess flag or warning is that bonds do have principal risk. We saw that all throughout 2022, 23. Um, as rates go up, bond values go down. So it's this inverse relationship. We saw that throughout 22, 23, and a lot of bonds got killed. Oh, but I got my 6, 7% yield, but your principal went down 20%. So that's another discussion. But bonds create yield, 1099. So all those type of investments in a non-qualified or what's also called a taxable account, we want to use that type of account to put our monies in and then invest in something that is going to grow at capital appreciation. Okay, so we're going from income to appreciation. We can do that in a number of different factors. And something we like to utilize are the wrappers of ETFs. ETFs are exchange traded funds. Um, they are very liquid, just like your savings account is very liquid, just like your money market's very liquid. And we can sell these ETFs on a daily basis and move them within accounts from your joint with rights of survivorship straight to your checking account. This is how 99% of our clients operate because of the tax efficiency. So we invest in these ETFs, and ETFs is just a wrapper. It's not the investment, it's the wrapper. The old school ETF was the mutual fund, but it became a little bit, well, what we're talking about here today, tax efficiency was not there. So they created the ETF. ETFs are normally passively managed, meaning there's not a strict manager on that fund, meaning that we have low costs. But the reason why we use ETFs is because the tax efficiency of that wrapper allows us to invest in things that will appreciate over time and will not cause a taxable event until, and this is important, until we sell that position.
Mm.
So I can appreciate this position by 4%, 6% every year, and I'm not going to get a 1099. I'm
Hmm.
not going to have taxable income. It's going to be deferred, deferred, deferred until the day I sell it. And the day I sell it, I can sell one position or the whole position. And then only the gain, and this is big, only the gain on that position is taxable and not taxable at ordinary income, taxable at long-term gains. So as a refresher, ordinary income, the highest marginal tax bracket is 37%. The very highest long-term gains is 20%. It's a big difference, especially when we are dealing with big numbers. Um, so not only are we deferring those taxes in that ETF wrapper, but we're also compounding on what we earn. So that's the main way which we avoid that 1099, that ordinary income, create that stability of growth without having to cause unnecessary, taxable events.
Yeah, that's super huge. And so a key thing is moving from CDs and 1099s and savings accounts over to non-qualified accounts with the ETF wrapper and timing things so that depending on life events and current income that the timing works out.
Right. Yeah. We're able to portionally sell off. We're able to uh, be more in control of your funds when you need it. So there's not a whole lot of trade-offs. When you talk about going from, right, the traditional savings, the CD world, if anything, it's more liquid than CDs. It's just as easy to move in and out from your checking. Um, so really, we're not seeing any trade-off at all, which kind of makes me laugh to your first point. Why don't people know about this? And maybe I'm still baffled myself, but yeah, it is quite interesting. We enjoy talking about it because it's an instant improvement to have somebody sit across from us and just that one small thing, which really isn't that small, it's quite big,
Hmm.
to be able to immediately, like that, improve somebody's maybe future retirement or their current income status. Yeah, that's huge.
Awesome. So, paint a picture for me. Tell me about maybe a prospect or a general case study of someone who's doing it all themselves. They're managing it. They're not aware of these different options and vehicles. What is the inflection point in when they're throwing their hands up and they're saying this is too complicated. I need to figure this out from a simplicity standpoint or a taxability standpoint. What are you most commonly seeing?
Yeah, as we get older, I think we want to enjoy everything that we've been blessed with.
Yeah.
And I think there's a rapper out there that said "Mo money, mo problems," right? I don't know. I'm a country guy, but it is kind of true in the sense of um, I feel like I offended the rap community, but
Favorite.
it is true in the sense of when people have so much, the anxiety of not messing up, and that's the flexion point of people when we see people come in and say, you know what, kudos, you've done a great job, and they've recognized this is a lot of hard work. It's so the analogy of climbing Mount Everest. We talk about it on all our events. Actually, going up the mountain's not as dangerous. It's four times more dangerous to go down the mountain. That's where a lot of people slip, fall, and it just takes one instant, and you're one of the many bodies on Mount Everest, which is when I learned that is very fascinating. It's same as retirement planning. A lot of people, it's easy to get up that mountain. The second you want to start taking a step down and enjoying your retirement, there's no going back. We're not here to sit across from you and say, "Sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you got to go back to work because we took a slip." That's where things become real, and we make that transition of we got to be efficient with everything, and that may sound minor, but this is one of the most tax efficient strategies we implement, and we see efficiencies in a 1 year span. But when you expand it to 5 or 10 years, now we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars saved.
Hmm. And is there a certain milestone or timing in someone's life when they should get ready, like make this transition or start taking action in relation to maybe their retirement date, either before, during, or after?
Yeah, honestly, people of all ages should be thinking about it, but we find that, people, I would say 10, even 15 years out, should start thinking about all these types of things.
Hmm.
Um, but people, let's just say in their 60s or 70s, I don't want you to feel like you're too late to implement some of these strategies.
Hmm.
But anywhere from 50 and on, that's the people we're talking to right now, as they have built up their assets and now need it to have some level of protection, some tax efficiency, and knowing that at some point those assets got to last them for 20, 30, 40 years.
Hmm. Great. So yeah, the I think the main points are liquidity and access to savings, but also having them be tax efficient and also the benefit of compounding over time. Are those the three
Right.
main points?
Yes, exactly. I think that we are trying to solve for what seems like to be a small problem, but as you mentioned, the compounding um, has a significant effect. I
Hmm.
do want to touch on one other thing because I did mention about the ETF wrapper, and I said it's not the investment itself. So, depending on our client and their needs, we utilize different investments of that ETF. Because some people say, "Oh, I have the ETF of the S&P 500, which is full on exposure. I don't want that. That's why I use my savings because I don't want that exposure." And I think this is the educational part that I want everyone to really understand this. There's ETFs out there that we specifically utilize for these savings replacers that follow the market or follow a specific index, but have 100% protection against the downside risk. Okay, so for example, we have an ETF that follows SPY. Okay, it has a cap of 6.5%. Okay, so 6.5% over 1 year, and the downside protection is 100%.
Wow.
Okay, so I have that ability to achieve 6.5%. Um, but if the market does drop, I'm just as safe as if my money was in a savings account. Okay, so also I want to point this out as well. The Federal Reserve is in a interest rate cutting environment. That just means CDs, anything bonds, anything that has to do with yields are going to be chopped lower, lower, and lower. This is just another signal to say we need to utilize the appreciating markets that we have without adding exposure to risk. That's why we use that ETF with that downside protection, but upside appreciation exposure. So there's some others that maybe don't have the full 100% protection and give us caps of 10, 12%. And those are the kind of conversations we need to have with our clients, with those prospects that come in and say, you know what, I don't want any risk, or I'm willing to take a little here and there, but all these positions will have some type of principal protection and upside, what we call exposure. So, really cool, really fascinating. I'd love to talk to anyone who is interested in those type of tools.
Yeah, that sounds great. So if anyone here is interested, how can they reach out to you, or what are some next steps they should take?
Yeah, some next steps. I would first visit our website. You'll learn more about us, more than I could talk about in our intro, tusshausgroup.com. We have two locations, Scottsdale and in San Diego. My email address, feel free to reach out to me directly, is blair at tusshausgroup.com. And, we have all our information on the website. Feel free to email me. We'd love to have a conversation. We typically extend a complimentary strategy session where people can come in, ask all their questions, and if they feel happy, they can walk away, no harm, no foul. But if they feel like they want to utilize some of our services, then we can have that discussion. There's no pressure, there's no obligation. We just want them to know what is out there and how they could be utilizing it.
Awesome, sounds great. Well, we'll have more information with this video. There'll be notes in the comment section. But yeah, feel free to reach out to Blair. Check out tusshausgroup.com. Any other things for people to think about before signing off?
Just be active. It's something that we talk about our physical health, little thing each day. Just take that little step. And that little step could be coming in to talking to us. It could be just you know, analyzing your budget. Little things will ultimately accomplish the bigger goals. So I look forward to talking to anybody who needs help, and hope this was helpful today.
Wise words from Blair Tushaus. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.